outstanding. And yeah, those you're right. Those are ones that work everywhere. And I think it's just a matter of figuring out what and the presentation wise. So look forward to hearing those all those tips that you can
Yep.
give us.
I'll talk a little bit about the materials too, because that's like the key thing with any fly is using the right material, especially the thread. The thread is like the key to all the stimulators I tie. So I can do it with almost any thread, but it makes things are a lot easier when I'm using like nano silk, and I'll explain all that.
Yep, that'd be awesome. And I was actually practicing. I knew your game, so I was tying up a couple of them with nano silk too. And yeah, I still have that love hate thing going with it. The one thing nano silk will tell you is if your scissors need to be sharpened,
Oh, you'll know real quick.
then oh yeah, because otherwise it just frays. You just it's like cut through barbed wire. But yeah, I had the nano
But
going today in
you should be able to
preparation.
find
So it was
these
something
down
that
there, especially at Feathercraft. Most likely will have them. These are Renome scissors, and Wapsi is the one that stocks them for the U.S.
yeah,
They're the best scissors to cut nano silk with. They stay sharp for like ever.
see, and if you tried the tweezer ones, I know you do the same thing I do, so you're wearing it the whole time. But have you tried the little tweezer scissors too? I found that those stay really sharp,
I have a couple pairs of these,
but you have to pick
those,
them.
but there is nothing that is as sharp
Yeah.
as these here.
Okay. Well, we're gonna take all your recommendations tonight that we can get. So we'll ask you for a supplier, even though we're not getting the pro status you are on it. All right. Mick, how are we looking? And are we pretty good to go?
I think we're good to go. No one's joined in the past 2 minutes, so go
Okay.
ahead.
And a couple of folks, I've gotten some texts that some will be coming in late. So if you could just keep an eye on that, that would
Yeah,
be appreciated.
will do.
And all right, without further ado, so first off, thanks everybody for jumping on the call. And if you got a chance to get on here a little bit earlier, so Suntao and I met via text several years ago, and I randomly sent him a message and said, "Would you like to come to St. Louis for our Healing Saturday?" And he responded very quickly and said, "Yes, sure." And he came down here. At the time, he was stationed and living in Indiana, and he drove in, and it was great. The presentation at Feathercraft, which is one of our fly shops here. And I mean, just people couldn't get enough of watching him. I think, and he'll probably give a little bit of this story. Maybe had been tying 3 years total by that time, maybe going into 3 years, um, but still just a phenomenon. And pleasantly, so been traveling the world and is back in the States now, lives in Colorado Springs. And we were able to get him to come on tonight. So I'm going to turn it over. If you guys have forgotten, you can pin the video. And so we're just going to be on one feature. If you'll mute on your, so we don't pick up any background noise and it doesn't jump around, that would be great. But the three dots at the top of the photo, and then it drops down and it says pin video. And then you'll be able just to get the feature tie on this. And then also your mute button is the one that looks like a microphone and you mute yourself. So we are good to go. It's all yours.
Well, good evening. It's 1700 here in Colorado. Glad to be helping out with PHW in any way I can. Uh, 2016 was when I first started tinkering around with flies, and then I was tying for about a year, and the program coordinators over at Project Healing Waters in Indianapolis convinced me to enter a couple flies into the at that time it was the fifth annual fly tying competition. I was quite hesitant because I was pretty new at it, but they were telling me like basically the flies were of good quality, and I thought they were just blowing smoke up my butt. But regardless, I entered the flies, and then I ended up winning first place that year after tying for at that point it was like 11 months. Ever since then, it's become basically part of everything I do. So I tie usually several times a week, not as nearly as much as I used to because of my job. I'm still active duty. First Sergeant, 11 Bravo, here in Fort Carson, Colorado, in the ABCT. I'll hit 20 years next year, and that ties really into the fly fishing and the tying aspect of it after 6 deployments and just seeing all the rigors of war and all the crap that goes with it. I needed a stress relief, and fly fishing was introduced to me, and tying really, really helped with basically relieving a lot of the stress and a lot of the anxiety and whatnot, because once you start tying, your mind completely gets focused on the stupid little hook of feathers and fur and all this other stuff that you're spinning on there, and it tunes out all the noise, and I found that it works really good for me. So when I first got started, I was tying a lot, like hours and hours on end, just because of the therapy that it was providing. But now that I started basically, at first I was like most new tires. I was tying like everything that you would see in a book just to try something new. And now I have very particular patterns that I use and fish a lot with here in Colorado, and that's pretty much what I tie for the most part. And then every once in a while, I'll get messages from people asking me to tie something that they just want to see my version of it, and then I'll tie some random flies that usually ends up sitting in a box. And then about 3-4 times a year, I'll do like a random raffle, and then usually send all the proceeds off to either PHW or Warriors in Quiet Waters Foundation. I don't sell flies. I get asked that usually about 5-6 times a week. But the main reason is I love it for what it is, and I don't want to turn into a business where I feel like I'm pressured to have to fulfill orders. But I do tie for, like I said, the shadow boxes and the charity auctions for like Healing Saturdays, and usually each of those shadow boxes will fetch close to $500. It's the simple fact that my flies are only available a couple times a year. So I like to keep it that way. That way the money that is coming from that goes to a good cause. With that being said, I was asked to tie a couple different patterns for you guys today. The first one's going to be a scud. Second one is going to be a stimulator, and if time allows, then I'll tie a crane fly. All 3 patterns work very well for trout, but can be used for panfish, bass, or any other type of patterns or any other species out there. So we're going to zoom in here to the fly itself. Is that too bright?
That looks good.
Or does that look better?
Looks good.
Looks good.
All right, so the first one's the scud. Very simple little shrimp pattern. Hook I like to use is Tiemco 2488, heavy. You could tie it either with or without weight. So if you put like use weight, a lot of people will put a little bead on there, or some people will wrap it with lead wraps. I like tying without the weight because I like using the fly as basically as either a trailer fly or the middle fly. We can fish with 3 flies here in Colorado. So I like to fish time without weight. So that way it flutters right in the middle column. And then typically where you find most of the scuds is towards the lower to the middle column, based on whether they're swimming or they're clinging to the algae and stuff, that all the gunk that's on the bottom of the river. So if you wanted to simulate more like they're just basically lingering around the algae and all whatnot, then you could tie it as a point fly. I usually add like a couple split shops about 6 inches from the point fly, and then I'll use that then as my first fly versus the trailer. So thread I'm using is Nano Soak, made by Semper Fly. It's a GSP thread. I use it for most of my patterns because it's a really small diameter thread. This right here is equivalent to about 50 denier. So with the smaller diameter thread, you're not building a lot of bulk up on the fly as you tie in your materials. But at the same time, since it's GSP, it's about equivalent to, I would say, popular one, UTC, probably 210. So even with a 50 denier thread here, it allows me to tie in the materials real tightly, and at the same time, allow me to flare deer hair, elk hair, or whatnot. For the antenna and the tail and the scuds, I like just using duck feathers. In this case right here is wood duck, but any duck feather would do. And all I do is just basically try to keep the edges aligned, peel off a couple of fibers, and then tie it in towards the rear. There's a couple tight wraps around there to see where it is. That's about good. And then I trim off the waist. Now, how far down the bend you tie in the feather is really up to you. I don't find that it really matters much. An alternative material you can also use is like Antron, but I like to take it to about the middle of the bend, and then I'll bring it up to the front, and then we're going to tie in the backing. The backing is really, the color is your choice. In this case right here, I'm using brown, but tan works, clear works. I just cut up a small strip of this backing, and then I like to snip off a little bit of an arrow point right here. It makes it for a lot easier to tie in. And I just tie it in by the tip. And this is again the benefit of using the nano silk, where I took like 4 wraps there just to get it secure, but it built up no bulk whatsoever. And then I stretch it out and take it all the way back to the tail. Okay. Next material is the wire itself for the ribbing. In this case here, I'm using small copper wire. One good habit, once you snip off the wire, is always try to stick it back in on that little tail end thing. Otherwise, you're going to get a spool of wire that will do this number. Poof. That's happened to me several times. And again, with the wire, basically, I tie it on the far side of the hook. Tight wraps. And then take it all the way back to the tail and the backing. Okay, then I go all the way back up front. At this point right here, I'll readjust my hook so that it sits more straight since I'm done with the bend of the hook. Peel off a couple more pieces of the wood duck, trying to keep the tips aligned. And then tie them in up front for the antenna. I like to use a pinch wrap in order to keep it right up there on top. 1 wrap, 2 wraps, and then tight. And then trim up the waist. Alright, at this point, we're going to build the body of the scud. And the body, really, the dubbing that you use is really up to you. There's really no right or wrong with this. In this one here, I'm going to use hare's ear, because I'm going after basically a tan looking scud. But you could use any natural dubbing, or you could use synthetic like ice dub or SLF made by Wapsi. They all work well. And scuds come in all variety of colors, between gray, tan, brown, orange, olive. And all I'm doing is basically putting on a relatively large dubbing loop on this, because we're going to brush it out in order to make the legs on this. So I'll get it started here, and then I don't want to put too much on just yet, because I want to see how much more I need before I put on too much dubbing. And then all I'm going to do is just basically start wrapping the body. I'm overlapping each of the wraps to build up a fatter midsection. Now at this point right here, if you want to make it into a pregnant scud, you can add orange dubbing and put it right there in the center. A lot of people will also use a bead, like a glass bead right there also, like an orange glass bead, and then it acts not only as a pregnant scud, but also as a hot spot. But in this one right here, I'm just going to go with a more natural scud. So by having the bulk of the dubbing right here in the middle, it gives it a more natural profile look. Okay. This point right here, I'm going to pull the backing forward. It's going to want to slide on you. So what I do is I grab it on the sides of the hook right here, and then I'll use a pinch wrap, bring one over, a second, and then now I can tighten it. And then I'll take another wrap in front of it, back behind it, and then right underneath the antenna. This point right here, so you save all your work, it's always a good idea to at least do a half hitch on here. The last thing you want to do is have everything undone once you cut off this backing. Now, taking the small copper wire, basically just wrap up towards the eye so that you create the segments. And then just tie the wire off. At this point, all that's left to do is to whip finish it. So I'll do like one whip finish in the back of it, and then I'll do it again right underneath the antenna. And then cut off the thread. Now at this point, you want to comb out all that dubbing using the old school M16 cleaning brush. Just take all that dubbing and comb it down, and it creates the legs for the scud. And that's pretty much a finished fly right there. If you want to make it even more durable, adding a little bit of UV resin right on top of the backing will help it withstand basically probably a dozen fish before it'll break down. There you go. 10 scud.
Outstanding. Thank you. That was the slowest you've ever tied that fly, isn't it?
Yeah, explaining it. This is a really simple pattern, and you can spin these out in like 3 to 5 minutes, no time at all.
Yeah. Yep. And I think with that one too, and again the shape of it and how you build it up underneath with the dubbing, and then with we often get questions in regards to the UV. Do you want to talk about that? I know you have to mention some UVs, but in regards to, is it a better light or is it a better UV, or what's your preference?
Well, the UV resin itself makes a difference. There's like tons of different manufacturers out there, and the one I like to use is Solaris because it dries tack free. What that is for you new tires is that you can basically touch it and it's not sticky at all. It dries completely dry, and it's very, very hard. I use this one right here. It's the bone dry in place of head cement altogether. So basically, at the end of, for something that requires head cement, I just add a little bit to the thread, do a couple wraps on there, and zap it with the light, and then it'll bond it just like head cement. They have also different viscosities where you have the thin, the thick, the medium. I mean, don't get so bent out of shape over which UV resin you want to use. The key is just getting one that is not sticky, and then having a good strong light that will cure it properly. Now, even if you don't have a really good light, again, you really don't need to reinvest in going out and spending a ton of money on light. Just zap it enough so that it cures, put it to the side, and then when the sun shines out the next day, take it out there, and within 3 seconds of being out in the sun, it'll cure completely hard.
Perfect. That helps a lot. And I know I had a couple questions on text earlier this week, and I said, just wait till Monday night. So,
yeah, so some of the other popular ones that people will also use is like they'll probably hate me for mentioning them, but Deer Creek is another popular brand. Golf is another popular brand. Most of the UV resins that are available on the market nowadays are all really outstanding. It's just each one cost difference, and then some are stickier than others. For me, like I said, I went through and I've tried them all, and this is the one that I used, and I was using it well before they asked me to represent their product. Because one of the things is that I won't use a product or represent a company and I actually like the product itself, and that's how I got started with a lot of these companies. Like I'm sponsored by Whiting Farms, but I was using Whiting feathers long before they asked me. Well, not too long. I was time for about a year and a half, and then they asked me to represent them. But to my opinion, they make the absolute best feathers for fly tying out there. And then the same deal with my gear, like some of the companies that sponsor me is Able, Fish Pond, Sims are the big three. There's a bunch of rod manufacturers that ask me, but I refuse to just stick with one rod because I think each rod manufacturer makes a good quality rod in a specific weight, but not all across the board. So I don't want to be limited. So I always tell them all no, because I'd rather have the choice of basically using whatever rod I want instead of just being stuck to theirs.
Great. All right. Anybody else have any questions before he goes on to the next fly? Now would be the chance to ask. I know we've got Arkansas on, we've got Scudville on. As far as the sow bug and different things, any questions before we go to the
sow bug roundup?
I have a comment. Yeah. Have him change his shirt. That logo, it keeps on grabbing the camera's focus.
All right, let's try this.
There you go.
How's that?
Perfect.
All right.
And you're going to the stimulator right now?
Yep.
Okay. This was one. Yeah, and we'll try to slow you down because I know you can tie this in like 4.5 minutes. On this one too, I love this fly. This is where I learned it, is watching your videos, and I love flies that have a lot of technique to them as far as adding different things. First material in is the last material out, as far as wrapping. So as you watch through this too, we'll kind of come back for questions, but this is a lot of fun. I love this fly. It's extremely effective as your top fly with when you fish anything, but it's probably one of my favorites, other than I have about 3 other ones too that are just your go-to stimulators. And I'm talking too much because he's already tying. Remember, it only takes him 4.5 minutes.
Well, this is the fly that I entered into the 5th annual Project Healing Waters fly tying competition, and when I won the competition in 2017. The reason why I started tying this fly in the first place was as I was going through all the different various fly tying book, I was looking for something that was what I consider challenging. And after reading all the materials that's on this fly, I was like, oh, this one's a ticket right here, because it basically encompasses a wide variety of materials. And I figure if I can get this fly down, then most other dry flies would be pretty easy. So I started tying a bunch of them until I finally got happy with a couple that I was finished with. And at that point right there, I started tying the different variations of it too, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the hook that I'm using is an Arex 531. Similar hooks is a Firehole 718 or Tiemco 200R. You could tie these anywhere from size 4 all the way down to, I wouldn't go any smaller than a 16. It gets a little bit too difficult once you get in the 18-20 range. An Elkhart caddis will work just as well, and that's in a 18 or 20 versus trying to tie on a simulator. But elk hair is the hair of choice for this. I just tied it on a clump, stacked it in a stacker, and then tied it on here for the tail.
We just lost your video.
Okay, 1 second. There we go.
There you go.
So with the secret with the elk hair, that people struggle with is it has a tendency to spin on the hook. So what I do with the elk in order to get in is I'll do a pinch wrap right here at the rear of it, basically just pinching the side of the hook, running the thread in between my thumb and my finger while I'm still holding onto the side of the hook, and then run that thread down. While I'm still holding onto it, I'll slowly wrap forward, but I'm not applying a ton of pressure yet to the hair until I get up here where you saw me flare it a second ago. And then once I'm up here, I'll pinch down and I'll flare that hair. And then I'll start sliding my finger forward, and then I'll wrap back with tight wraps all the way until the tie-in point, and that keeps the hair on top. Don't worry so much about the tail flaring, because there's a couple of tricks that if you don't want a big flaring tail, I'll show you how to basically deal with that. But then once you get it on secure on top of the shank, just basically trim off the butt ends of the elk hair. I like to trim it at an angle because you're going to want to build like basically a small little ramp here, the little taper for where the thorax is going to go. At this point right here, I tie in the hackle. In this case right here, I'm using a whiting unique variant. But the one thing that I've learned is that when it comes to dry flies, you can get away with basically 3 colors. Grizzly, brown, and ginger will cover like 80% of all dry flies out there. So all these other fancy different ones like furnace and all these different variants, Cree, they're all just nice and pretty, but they're absolutely unneeded. Don't tell Whiting I said that. So what I do is I like to use a saddle, but a neck also works, is I peel off basically to the stem here. You notice that one side of the barbs is longer than the other. So in this case right here, this is the curved side.
You're off camera on that.
Whoops.
Yeah,
This here is the curved side, and I peeled off more side on the lower end, because what's going to happen is when I'm going to tie this in here, the curved side is going to face towards the eye of the hook. And then by peeling a little bit more barbs off the other side, my first wrap is going to be with the stem. And that allows me to control this hackle the way I want it to go. Versus if you tie it in, it'll work still. It's just, it becomes a messier fly, because if you have full barbs on both sides, then that barb will have a tendency to flare in every which way. But this way I control it versus it trying to basically go wherever it wants to. So tie it in securely. Right here, I'm going to flare this tail really large here on purpose, just to show you guys how to control that. So right there, big bushy tail. We don't want that. Before I do anything else with that, we're going to dub it. And this is the great thing about stimulators, is you can use like any color for variation you want. Popular one is orange. So I'm going to use orange superfine. And all I'm going to do is just basically add on a thin noodle dubbing here, to show you how you control that tail if it's all flared up on you. So I just put a small little noodle in there for now. And all we're going to do is basically, while holding on to this tail and holding it down to whatever level that you want it at, I'm going to do a couple backwards wraps with this dubbing on it. And that dubbing basically acts as a thicker thread now, and it's pushing that tail down. And then bring it again forward. And now that tail's just about where I would want it. So if you flare it real tight with your thread, it becomes real bushy. You don't want that. That's a trick to actually get that elk hair under control. And then from there, just basically add more dubbing to dub the rest of the body. We're going to dub to about the 2/3 point, and that's where we're going to tie in the wing. This here is just a standard stimulator. However, a couple different variations to this fly is you can add in rubber legs. You can add in foam for the backing. You can also you can add in the underwing to this by adding crystal flash, or the good old-fashioned just regular stimulator will just work as well. One of the reasons why it's a fun pattern to tie is like there's really no right or wrong way to really tie this fly. everybody likes a really slim, clean-looking stimulator, but honestly, the fish don't care. I use these up in the alpine lakes here in Colorado, and the key to it is if you tie it well, you tie it with good materials, it's gonna get hammered by fish all day long. And then what with these mountain cutthroats that we have here, and also the brook trout, a properly tied stimulator has lasted me up to like 36 fish before it fell apart. But a lot of people would have chucked it by the time that it got to the state that it was in. But I just kept it on there, and it just kept on working. And then again, the secret to that also is the thread, because I'm using a GSP thread. Everything that I'm tying in there is going to be a lot more secure than I'm just using regular nylon thread. All right, we're just about done with this body here. Maybe a little bit more forward. And that's the other part to tying for me was when I first got started, I basically was looking at the fly, reading about the history of the fly, and then seeing how the fly is supposed to be tied. And if I didn't do it just right the way it was supposed to, then I just basically undid it and did it all over again. Because what I learned is that once you start saying, oh, that's good enough, then you'll have a tendency to say that about every other fly. And now you're just settling instead of actually tying a fly the proper way. So now we're going to wrap the body. And as you can see, by peeling a little bit of the barbs on this one side right here, when I do that first wrap, it's just a bare stem. And now I can control exactly how I want those barbs to flare. And then all you do is basically take the hackle and wrap it right up to where you stop the dubbing. If you have a rotary vise, you can make it even go quicker for you, but what I've found is I enjoy wrapping it by hand because I have a little more control. And then the 10 seconds that I save from having or compared to using a rotary vise isn't really worth it. So I'm just basically making sure that hackle is nice and secure. And there you have the body, it's complete. Now at this point right here, going with a standard stimulator, I'm just going to tie in the wing. But if you want to get all fancy on this thing, add an underwing to it, add a little bit of flare, you can add in some crystal flash underneath. Again, I have elk hair that I threw into a stacker. Getting rid of the extra long hairs or the super short hairs. And this is just standard Wapsi elk hair here. Okay, so the trick with the wing is if you want the wing to basically sit like this right here, you actually have to measure it out to about halfway across that tail, because if you tie it in right here, it's going to flare up. It's going to sit about here. So that one hair is bugging me. So I measure it out, transfer it over to my other hand, and then again, doing a pinch wrap, do one wrap, two wraps, and then flare this hair, and then run the thread through the butt ends so that you secure this hair nice and tight. And then I'll take a couple reps back behind it, and then just trim the butt ends. Again, try to trim it at an angle so that it creates a taper for when you dub it and add the hackle up front. Okay. And then just take your thread and go over these butt ends. Now, the same deal with the wing. Once I flared it to secure that elk hair, it's flaring way up like this here. So I want this wing to be pushed down a little bit more. So all I did was when I tied in the wing, I tied it like, I don't know if you can see on the camera here, but there's actually a small space between where the hackle and the body ended and where I actually tied it in. So with that little small space right there, what that allows me to do is Now grab a hold of this wing and hold it down, and I do backwards wraps, and basically pushes that wing down. And then as I go forward, I'll add more tension to that elk hair, and then go back up again. And now that wing's sitting nice and flat. If you have any stray hair from the elk, all you do is take the scissors and just trim them. And now that wing's about sitting the way I want it. The reason why I like the wing sitting that way versus flared up, when it sits flared up, the fly will still work, but it'll have a natural tendency to spin a lot more because of that wing sitting up when you cast it. So take the thread back to where the wing starts, and do the exact same thing with the hackle again. Peel a little bit more on one side or the other. And then tie it in. The thorax color is really, really your own personal preference. You could keep it the same body color, or you could change it up, make it into an orange green, orange red, orange burgundy, orange orange, orange olive. It doesn't really matter. Just gonna stick with the same color scheme here and use orange again. Another really, really good material if you want this fly to float all day is kapok. It's a natural fiber that they used to use in the old life jackets, and that stuff will float all day long without any floating. So once you dub it, just run it over the thorax, and all you're basically doing is just covering the thread and any of the butt ends that might be sticking out. But beyond that, the other nice part to using dubbing on any dry fly is that it gives the barb something to bite into once you start wrapping it. Whereas if you wrap that hackle over top bare thread, it'll have a natural tendency to basically just slide on you. Just about done. And one more little bit on the end. And from there, all you're going to do is just wrap that hackle. Tie it off. Couple wraps in front here to make sure it's nice and secure, and then trim it off. At this point right here, you can either use your UV resin or head cement. A lot of people will whip finish it right now, but what I like to do is I like to put just a little bit on there, and then run it over top, zap it, and in essence, you're really saving all that hard work you just did. And then from there, you can whip finish it. Add a little bit more of the glue. And then one zap. Now you got your complete stimulator.
That looks really nice.
Say again?
Very nice.
They're not that difficult to tie. It's very daunting at first when you first tie it, just because of the different technical aspects of it. But I'm telling you, once you do a couple hundred of these, you could tie. I've probably done a couple thousands by now, but you can literally, all the techniques that are used in this fly is applied to like every other dry fly out there. Every hopper pattern out there uses the same techniques off the stimulator, especially once you start adding in the rubber legs, the foam backs and whatnot. You could, once you tie that, like the foamulator that I posted the other night, you'll be able to tie any hopper pattern out there.
Does it have a different name besides just stimulator?
No, there's a tons of them. The actual proper name is it's the improved sofa pillow, and that's a lost art because the fly was actually created uh, back in the 30s. The original pattern was the sofa pillow, and they didn't have the body hackle. And then the creator of the fly added the hackle up front here and the body, and then he called it the improved sofa pillow. Randall Kaufman made it popular by publishing it in a book and then renamed it the stimulator. But in reality, his fly is an improved sofa pillow. The only thing that he changed different was the color pattern, and then the I think also maybe the other one was he only used elk hair, where the original one used a combination of elk hair and a couple of other materials. I think it was woodchuck was one of the other materials. But that was the case back then in the 80s, where people would change one or two things on a fly and then rename it. But since he was an author and he published it in a book, it got very popular, and then everybody knew Randall Kaufman as the creator of the stimulator. But no, there's a lot of different names to it. Improved sofa pillow, stimulator, foamulator. There's just a couple of the ones that come off the top of my head. But regardless of who created it or what made it popular, it's a really good fly to use just about anywhere across the U.S. It imitates a lot of different bugs. The fly that the original pattern was created for was to imitate the salmon fly. The fly itself is about this big, out of the western waters of the United States and Pacific Northwest, where they have the really large salmon fly hatches. And in essence, they're just giant caddises, and each of those dry flies are about this big. And then over time, it got scaled down to a little bit smaller. And then this still will work for, a stonefly. It's about this big for the salmon fly. But this will work as either a dry fly for a stonefly, or you change the color scheme up a little bit, it'll work as a caddis also. And then if you add the rubber legs to it, it'll also passes as a hopper. Very flexible pattern.
Than most of the commercial ones I've seen.
What's that?
So it looks better than most of the commercial ones I've seen.
Well, the problem with most of the commercial ones are they're made in like a couple of places in the world, with Singapore, Taiwan, the Philippines, and yeah, that's a totally different opinion of myself on commercially available flies, because they pay those workers like 20 or 10, 15 cents a fly, and they charge you guys like $2.50 to $4 a fly, and they fall apart after a couple of fish. You're better off tying. Even your crappiest stimulator will be better built than the ones that you buy at the fly shops.
And as we talked about before too, the different processes of laying everything in. And so, early on, and when we first did the introduction, was, the whole aspect of fly tying is just kind of getting lost in it, getting lost in the art of it. And you can see with some of these flies, as far as more processes, the perfection part comes into play. So if you're not liking it, cut it off, start over again. But these, again, hands down, it's a great one. You guys know I tie along most of the time. The Scud one, I just kind of looked and watched it. I didn't tie along. But this one and the foamulator one we were laughing about earlier when we were talking on the phone. I love this pattern. And Roger, you're on the call tonight. And so I'll just switch my camera over to, this is not nearly the same quality, but here's your hopper for the week. So it's kind of the same pattern, but it is, again, you can see how the similar styles and you get that technique down. It's a blast. I love this fly. So thank you very much.
Yes, like Amy stated, the techniques that are on there is applicable to a wide variety of flies. Just like the way I tied in that tailing for that stimulator there, you would tie in the same way when you're basically tying on a hopper. The way I tied in that wing on the stimulator right there is the exact same way you would tie it on an elk hair caddis. It's just you're trimming the butt ends instead of letting that the butt ends flare. But it's the same technique that's applied to like almost every single dry fly. And then once I start talking about the crane fly next here, you'll see how it can also apply to tying a variety of different other nymphs too. So the crane fly is a fly that you can tie either with weight or without weight. If you actually seen a crane fly swim around, they swim near the top of the surface fill, but people like to fish these deep and use it as a first fly versus one that's swimming near the top. So in this case right here, using the exact same hook. This is actually pretty small, but I'm sure you guys don't want to see me digging around to try to find the hooks right now, so I'm just going to use this same hook. But we tie them as large as size 4 here. Some people will tie them even as big as a size 2 here in Colorado. And they're starting to swim all over the place. Now, with big trout, especially big browns, usually, as you guys are well aware, being down there in St. Louis, and then you have the White River that's not too far away. It's very popular down there for them to use big streamers to lure some of those big monster browns. But when you have a size 2 to size 4 crane fly and you're drifting it right by its little lair, it's usually too much for that brown trout not to hit it. So nymphing wise, the 2 flies that have worked for me to land large brown trout on without using a streamer, when I say large, we're talking about 25 to 32 inch range here. That's pretty large for Colorado, is the crane fly and the silliest fly out there, the egg. Those are the 2 patterns that I've managed to land 25 to 32 inch brown trouts on without having to use streamers. So with this fly right here, we're going to want to use larger thread. So right here. All right, this is 6/0. And all we're going to do is start it behind the wire wraps. And then I'm going to leapfrog it over all the wire wraps to get to the front. So all I'm doing is building a dam in the front and the rear so that lead doesn't fly around. You could try to cover all the lead wire wraps with the thread if you want, but I found it, you'll just naturally start covering it as you tie in materials. So I'll do a little bit here, but I'm not going to go full bore and try to cover everything. Next part is the wire. I'm using brassy gold wire. You can also tie this fly here with a bead too. Now the material that I'm going to use for the body is actually a royal pain in the butt to use. Alternative to it is using just basically latex. But a good quality crane fly is really fat and squishy. So I'm going to use the Castor Squirmito, which is basically squirmy, wormy body material. But the hairline Castor one is better than any of the other ones, Spirit River or Wapsi or any of these other companies, because it's a lot more durable. So you could stretch it a lot more, and it's not going to fall apart on you. So right here it is, Castor Squirmito. This is the best squirmy, wormy material that I found. So the last material that's going to be wrapped on this here is the wire. So that's tied in first. The next material, second to last material that's going to be wrapped, will be the backing. I'm using the same backing here that I used on the scud. Just tie that in. And then the first material that we're going to wrap is the actual squirmy material itself. So that's the last material to be tied in. Okay, get a pinch wrap. And then stretch it out. Almost any material that squirmy, wormy material you use, if you stretch it out like this here, it would fall apart on you, but the hairline stays very well intact. And then from there, all I'm going to do is just bring my thread back up to the front. Now the tricky part. As you wrap this stuff here, it's going to want to slide all over the place because it's really slick. So the trick to this is I use my thumb and my forefinger on my non-tying hand, which is my left hand. So I do that first wrap. I'm going to give it a little bit of pressure just to make it relatively tight, but you can see if I let go right here, it just slides all over the place. So then I'm going to do a second wrap And I'm using my thumb, my forefinger right there, basically hold it in place. Now I'm going to use my thumb and then just continue to wrap forward, not allowing the squirmy, wormy material to basically just slide. I'm controlling it with my fingers, keeping it in place while I'm just wrapping it forward. And then as I get close to the front, I'm going to add a little bit more pressure. And then here's the tricky part, is tying it off. So all I'm doing is I'm holding it right up there with my finger right now. And then I'm going to grab the thread and capture it. Not letting go just yet. And then grabbing hold of the material right here and pulling it backwards. So now I'm capturing it not only in the back, I also capture it up front. And I'm just building a dam. And then once you think you got it wrapped well enough or tied off well enough, trim it. You'll know if you didn't or not, because they'll come undone. And then I'll do a couple more wraps just to be safe. Now I'm going to take that backing and pull it forward. Again, using the pinch wrap up front. Capture that backing. I'll do two, just basically securing wraps on it, just to make sure that that backing is where I want it. You pull a little bit tighter than at that point if you want. Sit up top. Happy with that. So I'm going to tie it in more securely now. And then again up front to secure it. Just like with the scud, exact same thing that basically I'm doing with the backing and everything else on this, the exact same way I did the scud. So I'm going to do another half hitch up here. Save all my work. Then with the brassy wire, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take it and I'm going to run it through the segment itself on all my wraps. I'm not putting a ton of pressure on it. It's just enough that it's just adding a little bit of extra durability, and it provides it that segmented look. Because you put too much pressure on it, it's going to cut right through that squirmy, wormy material. So right there, I got one more segment up front. Now you can tie it off. Helicopter it off. Did not helicopter very well, so I'll just have to tie off that. And now all it is just building the head on the fly. And whip finish. And just add a little bit of the UV resin up top here for the head. And there you have the finished crane fly. Really, really easy to tie, but the material is what makes it a pain in the butt because it's so slick. But once you get the hang of it, of using your thumb and your forefinger to control each of those wraps, they become a cakewalk. Doesn't take very long to tie, and it works everywhere across the U.S. that has crane flies. You tie it in smaller sizes, it can also work as a mealworm too. And it also comes, the squirmy wormy also comes in different materials. Another one that works really good for, especially for stock trout, is the bright pink one.
What are you trying to say there? No, outstanding. And what's amazing with this, and first off, thank you. You also make this look so easy that it's insane. This is my weekly where you guys can laugh at me, but I have the materials. I didn't know this was the fly we were tying. He's not kidding. So this material, when you're trying to wrap it around, it wants to bounce on you and do different things. I would not recommend this starting as a beginner one for a participant, but it is something where as you wrap that, you can see where the segments are going. But if you stretch it too thin, then it gets that flat look. So it's just kind of that perfect touch. But it was it is kind of fun to go along, and Spirit River. So I know he reps for, but this is the one I found as far as the most durable, that it doesn't cut with your thread. As far as just different. And then you talk about different areas of the country. When he first mentioned crane flies, I thought he was talking one of these. I was all ready for a dry fly. So anyway, this part too, again, with the material, this thing can stretch. I only have about 4 inches maybe cut off, and this I can easily stretch 18 inches. So it's insanely stretchy. It takes a little bit of practice on there, but yes, bright pink does work well in our parks for our hatcheries. But that's a beautiful fly, and yeah, looks like a mealworm.
That would be money at Bennett for sure.
That's money written all over it. So
Oh my
there you go,
gosh.
Mick.
Hey, son,
Yep. So
son, where did you get that? What was the name of the squirmy wormy material you like the best?
It's called Castor's Squirmito. It's made by Hairline.
Okay.
The other reason why I like it is the coloration of it. It matches, like the color is like almost perfect to match a crane fly larva once this squirmy wormy material gets wet. And then it's a little bit thinner than the Spirit River, so you could use it on smaller hooks also.
Son, Bob Betts here. What are you using for your wing case?
For my wing case?
Yeah, it's the same you use
The
on.
backing? It's a scud backing.
Yeah, what color is it?
This one here is it's brown. Sometimes the packaging will say tan, but it's actually brown. But it gives it that like two-tone look on a crane fly.
Okay.
And this is just the Wapsi 1/8 inch one. If you want to tie this on a larger hook, then you can get the next size up that they have. I forget what it is, but they have one that's even wider than this, and that's what a lot of people around here will use on the size 2 and size 4 crane flies.
Fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.
yeah, and I think definitely as far as diameters on anything that you look at, and I would always take Soon's recommendation on this, but it does come in different diameters too. And again, you've got a whole lot of material to be able to work from on this. If you're making kits for folks, definitely the one thing that I found about squirmy worms is do not leave them in a hot car. Okay, they will melt into your other stuff and they become a ball of gum. So these are kind of that one, again, use them, figure out what, but you definitely don't treat them with anything else in my experience.
Question.
Lessons
What is that crane fly? Is that also known as a rockworm up on the Platte? That's what we used to use years ago for fishing.
On the South Platte?
Yeah, up by Deckers.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Okay.
That's where I use these a lot, is up on Deckers, and then
Yeah.
but I also use them on the Dreamstream too.
Okay. Yeah, because we used to catch an awful lot of big browns on the.
Yep.
Back in the day before it was blue ribbon, we used to be able to just pick up the rocks and get the actual larva and use them. So.
Yeah, that's exact fly that I'm imitating right there with that crane fly, and I usually tie these in size 6.
Yeah.
Is the typical one, and then in the height of summer, then I'll go as large as a size 4 when they get a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Down in southern Colorado, especially, and then once you get down towards New Mexico and the San Juan, there's tons of them all over the place, and that's what the trout down there also gorge themselves on.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, folks. Any other questions on this one? Anybody? Thoughts, comments?
Here's a cool
opinions?
feature with
That's
this
a good
vise,
looking-
is it spins the jaw.
That's I like that view.
I just figured it out the other day when I bumped it by accident, and it spun.
Who makes the vise?
This is made by CNF. I have 5 different vices that I use, and this one has become my favorite so far. Because once you lock in the hook on this thing, it does not move. And the other nice part to it is the jaws itself has some pretty strong magnets, and it'll hold the hook on there just until you get it. See, it won't fall out. So it works really good when you're, especially here in Colorado, when I'm tying a lot of size 22 to 26s, where you always end up dropping those stinky little hooks all the time. And this magnet will keep it in place so it doesn't go flying in the carpet and lost forever until you step on it.
There you go. See, Amy, 24s and 26s. You see? What am I
Nice.
giving me static about my 20s and 22s?
Yeah,
I have 18s out. I have 18s out. I did my whole stash of caddis. I'm good. This weekend it rained on Saturday. I got all caught up.
I caught a
But yeah.
24-inch, 25-inch rainbow today at Decker's on a size 24 rojo midge.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you're just like a freak of nature. So anyway,
Is that vice you got there? Is that Charlie November Foxtrot?
Nobody can see that fly.
Yep, Charlie November Foxtrot. It's a Japanese-made vice, but it's just really, really well made. And the thing is machined for one purpose, is to really just to hold on to a hook and tie flies.
Cool.
But I use a Renzetti Master, Norvice with all their different jaw configurations, and then I have a Regal Revolution, and also a Stonefo transformer, and this one here by far is my favorite, probably followed by the Renzetti. Now, if you're one of those people that like to do a lot of rotary stuff, this is not the vice for it, because it's made for like fine-tuned control. As you can see, when I spin it, it's pretty slow, but this gives me like complete control of like how fast I can spin it, how slow I want to spin it. But even at the quickest setting, it doesn't spin really, really fast. So it's really not good for rotary, but I hardly ever use the rotary function anyways. And then the jaws on this thing here will also close up or extend to give you more room. And then the jaws itself spins.
Yeah, that screw mechanism is a lot like the Dan Vice system.
Yeah, it's real nice. It holds, like I said, I've put in the smallest I tied on this is a 30, and the largest I've used is a 6/0, and neither hook will move.
Cool.
You bend the hook before it'll actually move on you.
Yeah.
Pretty cool vice. That's part of the fun of the tying is all the different toys.
Yeah.
How does it pack and travel?
Real easy. Like basically it's just one piece down here. And then everything else just unscrews. And then the base is really, really good for traveling because it's really, really thin.
Oh, okay. Because that's the thing I think you run into is when you're carrying and all of a sudden your plate is so huge to balance everything.
Yeah, what they did in order to balance all this right here, because most of the manufacturers make super heavy plates in order to keep your vice from spinning all over the place. This here uses the wide approach, where they made it really wide to spread out the weight, but at the same time, it's so thin that it's easy to pack. And then all it is just one hex screw underneath there, and you can actually have this as completely thin plate, and then just pack this away separately. Whoops,
Wow.
right there.
All right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, Nick.
We'll be asking more questions on your cool toys. Anybody else have any questions? We really don't ever have a time limit, and I know it's pushing right now. We're just hitting 7 o'clock. It's up to you guys if you want to see another fly or if you have any questions. And then also respect for everybody's dinner time. We'll kind of see where this leads. But anything? Any randomness? Nothing.
Negative.
I will say one thing. I just want to say thank you for the invitation. This was great.
Diane, you are always welcome. This is our little small tiny group. Last week we told Mick, without Mick and his wife, we wouldn't have kept this afloat on our virtual side. And I know you can empathize with that in regards to the support and the teamwork that it takes to get all of this happening and communicate with folks. But we're joined, all over the place. Mike Swanner, you're in Northwest Arkansas. We got Bob Betts on here in Virginia. Terry's in Illinois. We have Roger in Illinois, Carl in Illinois. And we have Jim Stanley's on from Colorado Springs as well. I can't see everybody. I always do my little romper room thing, but I don't have that whole view on here. And then we have, oh, I see Jera's on here. He's in Tennessee. We have Dave Witt on. So if anybody sees Dad on theirs, that's Dave Witt.
One of these days I'll change it.
He logs in. Dale's on here. So we've got, again, our little group. And I got a couple texts. We didn't have folks join us tonight who had either DAV meetings and a couple other things too. So unfortunately, we didn't see them tonight. But what's really so cool with this is how many people we just kind of pick up. It keeps it casual. You get to talk to the person who's presenting, ask questions. Believe it or not, a lot of the top questions come down to thread and UV and lights and different things that you use. But we are very, very appreciative. I think that's just the cool part where, again, the best part about this pandemic is we knocked down some state lines and stuff and people are able to connect.
Amy gave me this here when I did the demo in at Feathercraft, the
I
PHW
did.
coin. I still got it.
Yep. I actually, and I thought, well, I know the challenge coins are kind of private, so I didn't want to boast mine. Mine's actually up on my dresser, and I have the one you gave me as well. So he didn't know I was giving him one. I didn't know he was giving me one, and it was just the absolute challenge coin moment. Because I couldn't believe, again, if you guys jumped on a little bit late, I just sent a text and he said, sure, I'll be there. I mean, no questions asked.
Yeah, I just got back from California.
And I'm like, hey, I've been following you, and would you mind coming to St. Louis and doing our healing Saturday? He's like, sure, I'll be there. Tell me the weekend. And I think, well, wasn't it the first year that I contacted you and you were actually out of country?
Yeah.
And so I had dibs on the next year when you were back, and that was 2017. So, again, been a journey watching how this program works and what it means to people and the absolute talent. But that tunnel vision on perfection, the art of the fly tying, absolutely hands down. I'm just couldn't be happier for you. And again, I wish you're going into 20 years now active and a military career that's phenomenal. But thank you for your service.
Yeah, and don't tell anybody how in Colorado, but my most enjoyable time spending some fishing and just exploring and then also talking to people was down there in the Ozarks. People are much friendlier. Much friendlier than out here in Colorado.
Do you ever hear from or talk to Steve Dally down at Dally's in Cotter? When I believe it was several years ago, but he's the one who does the Streamer Fest, and then Mike's on the call. They do the sow bug every year.
Yeah, I usually went down there for the sow bug, and then my close friend, like one of my closest friend, actually works there at Wapsie. I met him at the sow bug, and then him and I became just good friends ever since. He runs their dye department. So last year was like the first year, aside from when I was out of the country, that I could not make it down there because of the pandemic, where we had all the plans, tickets, everything all ready to go until the sow bug got canceled. But yeah, the people I've learned from Missouri all the way down to Arkansas are just drastically different. You have that hospitality that's unmatched compared to out here. People are just a little bit strange in Colorado. Now there are some nice folks here, and then they have the largest PHW program in the nation here in the Springs also, and the fishing's phenomenal, and the outdoors, the mountains, everything's phenomenal. But people just aren't the same compared to the Midwest.
They didn't used to be that way. I'll tell you, it was when I was there back in the 60s, it was the friendliest place in the world. But then again,
yeah, what happened?
Californians in.
All the people from California came out here?
Oh God, yes. They flooded out there in the 80s. Spoiled the state for everybody.
Yeah, it's like in Indiana was the same way. You couldn't go anywhere walking down the street. People just say hello. Here, you say hello to somebody, they look at you like something wrong with you.
Might well be that they're, son, it might well be that they're not that rude. They're just stoned out there.
That could be true too.
Oh man. Well, it is. I spent a few years out there in early 80s, and all I know is I never realized that geology was actually a study in school, and I never met so many geologists. But I had bonus. My roommate, her boyfriend was this ski coach for Boulder, so I got to see some places. But then that was the start of my migration west, where I landed in Washington. But I enjoyed that time out there. But when I was out there, it was when the ban on when you could burn a fire in a fireplace based on your license plates and when you could do different things. So it was all about the air quality and different things. Again, that kind of dates me. You guys can figure it out. I already had a birthday this month. But anyway, it's a beautiful state, and there's some amazing places to get out there. And I love living kind of that vicarious of just watching the pictures where you've been, and it's enough that we can't figure out where you are, but it's just really cool photos of fish. So enjoy that part of it. But we're not as
any of you from across the program there ever make it out here and you need somebody to show you around, just hit me up.
We will, and yeah, I'm sure. Well, we'll get a few of them that'll be sending emails and texting, going, "How do we get a hold of him?" So when do you leave? December. But yeah, we'll take care of you. Well, I will let you guys go. I mean, I know we got a couple flies in, phenomenal flies. If anybody has any questions or comments, please, now's the time, and so that we can kind of again respect everybody's dinner hour. Or do you want to just sit here for another hour and watch them tie? Because I'm pretty sure we have them for the. No, I'm kidding.
Mitch, did you record
Thanks,
it all?
son. Thank you, son. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for having me. I love working around with other vets. I appreciate your guys'
Thank
time.
you.
Mitch, did you record
Good,
it?
thank you.
Yes, I did.
Thanks, son.
Well, thank you all for your service. It was a pleasure.
Hey, yeah, definitely.
Yep. If
If
somebody did
Colorado.
record it, Amy, if you could share that, or somebody could share it with the attendees here with the link that the recording's going to be, because you lost me at the dubbing on the Scud, so I'd like to catch up with those other two.
We'll figure a way, Amy.
Yeah, we can definitely share that, Jara. And the good part is that it's literally an email away. As far as being able to just the tutorials. Son, do you want to talk about where you are on Facebook and Instagram as well? You're welcome to do that. I mean, if people want to see where you are for more information or just to follow you, I'm happy with that too.
The one that I'm most active on is Instagram. It's just my first name _ my last name. And then on Facebook, it's just my first name, last name. Just look for pictures of fish. There are a whole lot of Santiles out there, but none of the other ones got fish photos, so. But if you ever need a more detailed how-to on something, let me know, and I can do one where, because most of the ones with today's culture, they want the quick down and dirty. That's why those 60-second clips are really popular, because they just want the gist of how to do it. And certain techniques that I do compared to other tires is what they're looking for. But if you need more detail on how to, let me know, and I can record one and I can send it to you. You can send it out to whoever's asking. Yeah, most of the people on social media nowadays, they don't want to sit through 12 to 20-minute how-to video on how to tie something. They just want 60 seconds in and out of it. So that's what mostly I post up on there, along with the fishing adventures here in Colorado.
You on YouTube?
No, I don't get time for that. I run an HHC as a first sergeant, so 196 to 215 people. Yeah. So by the time I get home in the evening, it's usually about 1900, and then I don't have time to record anything on there.
Wow.
Yeah, so most of the stuff I post on there is usually from the weekends, and I'll just save it for posting sporadically throughout the week. And the same deal with the fishing adventures.
So I ran upstairs real quick to get my coin. So this is the one we were talking about.
Cool.
So look how cool that is.
That is cool.
That's why it's on my desk.
Yeah,
Can you guys see it?
I was in E8 working as an operations sergeant major when I gave her that coin there.
Yep. So the back of it, and yep, it sits right up on my dresser.
Cool.
And every day you're in my thoughts, keeping you safe.
Well, another year of it.
So
That'll be
all right,
done.
all. Well, we this was awesome, and so we have. This is usually that awkward time that either nobody talks or Roger asks for a hopper. So what does anybody have any? What would you guys like to see next week for Monday night? So we've got the 24th, I think, on our schedule. What would you like to see fly wise?
Anything that's really, really effective over in West Boulder. I just found out that the West Boulder TU club out there is 15 minutes from my older sister's home in West Boulder. And I've been invited to come out there, and I'm going to figure out a way to make a trip out to West Boulder to fish. So anything that's
All right.
super
Well,
effective there.
We don't get to infringe on sun's time every time. So what would you guys, Colorado Springs, Jim, you're on the call too. What would you guys recommend for West Boulder area?
What
on a
time of
fly?
year? What time of year is it?
Oh, summer, midsummer.
Oh, then I would
Hoppers.
go, yeah, with hoppers and caddises, with midge as droppers behind them. So like a size, I think most of the rivers out there are actually tailwaters also. I think you're pretty close to the Taylor. And then Williams Fork is not far away either. And both are tailwaters. So there will be tons of size 20 to 24 midges also. So if you tie on like basically a big hopper pattern, and then about depending on the pool that you're fishing, anywhere from 12 to 14 inches, tie like a size 22 to 24 midge underneath that, and that'll work real well there. And it
If
doesn't have to
anybody's
be anything fancy, just like a bling midge or a zebra midge will work just fine.
Anybody's interested, our team's meeting will be next Thursday, the 27th, and guess what we're tying? Midges.
Nice.
There you go.
See if I got it up here.
Son,
So do you guys want to do a caddis for next Monday night? I need kind of a vote, yay, nay. You want a caddis? I mean, midge is something you can jump on John's call. He can send out the information for his call on a midge, and then like a caddis style. And then from there,
Anything, just tie it up.
anything? Okay.
So these are a couple of
So-
different variations of the stimulator. A question was asked before on, like this one here's the Royal.
Yep.
This one here has the wire ribbing to make it last even longer. The rubber leg version. Oops.
Oh, I like that one.
Just saw that
Formulator.
I
video.
like the purple.
This here has no hackle on the body, but it has a little bit of bling to it.
Yeah, that's
And
nice.
then ever popular formulator. It will float all day long. And then you can tie them in all different colors. This one has a purple body. The orange one that I tied earlier. And then you can see how many crane flies I use.
Kyle, do you fish the Gunnison?
Yes. I actually like going to the what is it, the Black Canyon? I think it's the
Yeah.
park. And that portion of the Gunnison that flows through there. I also last year I fished Paco State Park. And there's one more river that flows through that. I can't remember the name of it. That flows right through the Montrose area. But the Gunnison and Paco was the two areas that I fished the most. And then the Black Mesa or the Black Canyon is so nice because it has all those alpine lakes that you literally can drive right up to, and the hike is only like a couple hundred meters for most of them, and catch some nice big cutthroats. Gorgeous area though.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Right. So kind of narrowed it down. Jared wants to see some sort of caddis, maybe. You guys are always good at this stage. What do we want to tie next week? Caddis?
Go Caddis.
Caddis? Caddis. Okay. Sounds like
Caddis is good.
sounds like a vote for caddis.
I got an idea. Let's
And,
do the caddis.
And Chris is awake.
No, no. I tried the crane fly. It looks like crap, but that little squirmy crap is hard to work with. It's the
I wasn't
first time I
kidding.
ever tried it too. It was pretty rough.
Show your picture of it, Chris.
Well,
You just sent me a picture. I can
yeah.
tell.
I don't know if you guys can see it. My camera sucks. But it's red with the I have no idea what kind of hook it is. It was already in my vise with thread on it, so I just used it.
Oh, 100% work though.
Oh yeah.
They're ugly little things.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely get better at it for sure.
Yeah, that's the great thing about that fly is that as long as you get the bulk and that profile right, and you have the profile definitely and the bulk on that, it'll work. They don't have
Hey,
to
Son,
be pretty looking flies.
if you take UV glue and put it on the crane fly, will that help it?
It will deteriorate the squirmy
Oh,
wormy.
okay.
Oh yeah, I beat that stuff.
Same with
up.
super glue, will deteriorate it also. The
Okay.
stuff's a pain in the butt because literally you apply any adhesive to this stuff and it'll fall apart on you. And that's why the only part that I stick to it is just the actual thread head itself in order to lock everything in. But if you put it anywhere, super glue, Zap-A-Gap, UV resin on this stuff, and it disintegrates. It'll look fine at first, but then when you open up your fly box in a week or so, then the whole thing is just like a mess. I learned the hard way. I tried. Now, like I said before, I forgot to talk about it. The alternative to it is using the nymph skin. And this is basically Kylie's brown nymph skin. It's latex. And the only difference with this, the biggest difference to this, obviously, is that the Squarmito is round. So it gives it a better profile for a crane fly because they're really round in shape. This here will not give it the same round shape, but it's a lot more durable, a lot more user-friendly. The only difference is you have to add a lot more wraps on it to give it that bulk because it obviously isn't as thick as the squirmy wormy stuff. So you use thicker thread and use a lot more wraps to give it that bulk. Crane fly is a real fat. And then if you use the exact same technique with this here as you did with the one that I showed you for the crane fly, then you end up with a really, really thin crane fly. It doesn't work quite as well. But this is an alternative if you struggle with the squirmy wormy material.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that squirmy wormy stuff down.
Yeah, it's just a matter of just finger control, using your forefinger and your thumb to control it with each wrap, and then basically all you need is just capture it. As you wrap forward, capture until you tie it off, and then once you get that down, it really becomes easy. I mean, I could spin these out in usually about 3 minutes now.
Yeah, that one looks really good.
Yeah, I go through probably about 300 of these a summer.
Oof.
That's what the fish eat are, the big ones.
Well, isn't that something where we hear more and more about people using even the latex gloves? And I'm not trying to change up the whole topic of what you tie these with, but I think you hear a lot of different things, everything from rubber bands all the way through the latex gloves, not just for the shell for pulling over, but also for the wraps on, and again, in this area, it's a mealworm in our space. I don't know that we call them crane flies. It's a mealworm. But I think that different technique of trying to find that stretchiness where it doesn't tear.
And the same day with the backing on the scuds, you can use a Ziploc bag, just cut a strip off of it. You don't have to get the actual backing itself. That's in essence all it is. It's just cut much neater than what we can cut with scissors.
Right, yeah, I couldn't cut straight to save my life.
Longer scissors, Chris. Longer scissors.
No, I can't have scissors right now.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah. I was gonna recommend a paper cutter, but I won't recommend that either for you this week.
Had a rough week.
Yeah, we're glad you're on the call. Anybody have any other questions while we're kind of wrapping up? This is great. This is always when all the organic stuff happens about, well, what about this? Well, what about that?
Oop, we lost your video.
Nothing? He did that on purpose. He's trying to tell us he's hungry and he wants to go eat dinner.
No, there's one setting on this thing where it will prevent it from shutting off, and I couldn't figure it out. So it's easier to just turn it on and off. But it's a lot clearer than using a laptop camera or a phone camera.
Yeah, you're using the big boy, right? You got your big camera set up? Okay.
Yeah, that way I can give you guys the clearest video on the other end.
All right, I'm about to go eat some deer chili. I will see y'all later. Thank you again very much. Appreciate it. Great job.
I'll be right over. No, some jalapeno chips.
I got them. I got them.
Be right there.
We're all good. We know where you live, Chris.
No, you don't. Come out. See ya.
We can find it. We can find it.
We'll be down in about 7 hours. I'll be down in about 7 hours, Chris. Can you hold it for me?
There ain't going to be any left. I have to fight the kids for it.
Gotta run, but I really enjoyed the presentation. Sometimes you're quite an accomplished tire.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. You
Thanks
guys
for
have a
having
good
me.
night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. All right.
Good night, all.
You will.
We will wrap it up, and the marathon by Bill Campbell is this Saturday, and so that runs, I believe, noon to 4 Central Time, 1 to 5. Anyway, I can send the link if anybody's interested on that. He is doing a presentation on the Catskills, and he's traveled there for the last 20 years. That'll be again this Saturday. So if you're interested in that and you have not received a link, you are more than welcome. That's on a different format. So it's on Teams, and it is something where you just click to join. And I'd be happy to send that information if you did not see it.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Bill's done another. Okay, I'll send that. And other than that, we will be doing Caddis next Monday. Son, thank you as always.
He's gone already.
Oh, he is? See,
Yeah.
he had to bail. He wanted to go eat.
Yeah.
And yeah, this was awesome. Dale.
Hey.
Dave.
Thanks,
Amy.
Amy. Thanks for having
Yeah.
us. Enjoyed it.
Thank you guys. So we are always the same link every Monday. We don't change it up. So if you're ever interested or just saying, hey, I wonder what they're doing, you are more than welcome to jump in and just visit. I don't send it out. I send it out to kind of our main group here in St. Louis area, but it's grown from that. But you can see it's never huge. We have, again, 15 people on here. So it's a great time to ask questions and talk. When I talk, I end up doing about shopping for different things, because I think that sometimes we get so into our primo stuff that we forget what it looks like of the glitter of a fly shop. And how overwhelming that can be. So just kind of talking about those different things. And if you guys would like to see anything, and we've been able to cross a lot of state lines with this. So we're having a good time on Monday nights, but you are more than welcome anytime. Again, the link never changes, and we'll just look for everybody's smiling face.
Thanks, Amy. Hey, what's your Facebook page website, or what's your location on Facebook?
We don't put this up there. Is Les still on the call?
No, Les is gone.
He jumped off. Yeah, he had baseball.
I'm just thinking generally, not for the Zoom meeting, but just general.
For mine, it's just my straight out one is Amy Milne. So just my first name and last name.
Mhm.
We are kind of in a tough position in St. Louis. So we have a St. Louis Facebook page for Project Healing Waters, and it's St. Louis, and then it's St. Louis VAMC. So VA Medical Center. Because we see 300 inpatients and then we only have 18 walk-ins. So ours is kind of a different, had we not been able to do this virtual side, we would be one of those who was closed. We have not posted much there. We just kind of communicate, smaller community. And then there is no like Heartland region. So even these videos, I think Mick will save these and then he'll throw them up on YouTube, and you got to find it. But we can send additional information on that too.
Great.
Yeah, you got to find it. Well,
More the merrier.
we were a little bit, I'll be the first one to admit is I don't necessarily want people I don't know all of a sudden finding you. I mean, it's just kind of it's a safety thing, and people had that. We don't do Facebook Live for our meetings. We've just done this through, we did about 6 weeks where we just tested cameras and connections just to make sure, because there's nothing worse than watching that. And you saw it a little bit on the video tonight. He has an autofocus, and manual focus works well, but the autofocus, it keeps picking up different backgrounds. And we spent a lot of time just trying to get it right. But it is something where I don't all of a sudden want to like not know who's on our call. And so we were a little bit protective of that for our participants' sake as well.
Yep, very good.
But yeah, we're getting there. But we are high tech now. Gosh, I can answer a text and be on a Zoom call. Woo!
I think you have arrived.
I guess so. And I can reset your password, Dale. So
yeah, there you go. What login?
I know. All right, guys. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and you guys have a great week. I'm sure I'm talking. Well, Jara, what are we on? 9 a.m. We're 8 o'clock my time tomorrow for our meeting.
Yep, 9 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, 8 a.m. 8 a.m. my time.
Yeah, 8 a.m. your time.
You Easterners.
Just a quick FYI, but I think I told you, no, that was Lois. I told that I bought a little pontoon one-man drift boat, and
really,
yep, and took it out on the Nolichucky, and 15 minutes after we launched, I was going through a class 2 rapids and ended up wearing it as a hat.
Oh,
wow.
But I am going to get better, because there's some nice, when they're not generating, some nice, deep, quiet pools. And me and this big bad boy right here.
Oh, look at the size of that thing.
That's a rat.
Yep.
So one of them, well, I'm not guessing. I'm hoping you're not throwing that off a fly rod, because
absolutely not. Yeah, 15 weight. No,
I was going to say that emphasizes my chuck and duck on the streamers.
Yeah.
But and because when I first started tying, and I started tying on streamers and bigger stuff, but one of them that I should do, I love this pattern, but because yours looks like a rat. So here's a splinter mouse.
Yeah.
I love this pattern. Anyway, it's you get to use some different materials. It gives you some good, learning how to use the foam on. This guy's been sitting for a while. He got beat up a little bit. Can you tell?
Yeah.
So, but it's one sheet of foam, and then it's your rabbit strips.
Yep.
And so, but those are great. And then you'd be able to fish that, a little bit safely.
The guys down here are, night fishing, and anything that'll move water, they're kind of difficult, except for a roll cast, to get anything out there on a fly rod at night. But anything that moves water, those 30, 32, 34-inch browns are trolling at night. And you can have anything from a huge brown to a pike or muskie, or a young fellow on the river right up the road from me here, down the valley, just a little ways on the clinch, landed a 5-foot sturgeon.
Wow.
5-foot sturgeon.
When they're bigger than me, I don't need to fish those. But these are fun. And so again, kind of the crossover from Tennessee to Arkansas, and typically, and this is where I learned that pattern, was on the mouse, because you're right, it hits and it kind of makes that nice splash, and then just stripping it through. and you're pushing water and then it absorbs enough, but then you've got kind of that bubble underneath where the foam did.
Yep.
But these are light. I can throw these all day long with my 5 weight. I would not want to catch what you just described on my 5 weight. I'd probably start crying or something. But
No,
it is,
you'll do exactly what happened when I caught that 19-inch smallmouth on my 5 weight. You'll follow him downriver.
yeah, then you'll become river runs through it, Jarrah style.
Yep.
Yep.
All right, all. Well, time to eat on this end. And
Yep.
Jarrah, I will see you in the morning. Mick, thank you as always.
You're fine. It was
All right. Thanks.
Roger that.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night.